The sun was high in the sky, casting a warm, golden glow over the quiet suburban neighborhood. Birds chirped in the trees and a soft breeze rustled the leaves. Families were enjoying their weekend in the community, children laughing as they ran across lawns and played with sprinklers. At the center of the neighborhood was a large, beautiful pool, gleaming under the bright sunlight. It had been a favorite spot for residents, a place where they could escape the heat, relax, and enjoy each other's company. On this particular afternoon, a man who had lived in the neighborhood for many years decided it was time to close the pool. It wasn't an unusual thing. He had been taking care of the pool for a long time, making sure it was safe, clean, and ready for anyone who wanted to enjoy it. Today, he needed to cover it up and lock the gates for maintenance, something he did regularly to ensure the water stayed clean and safe. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, organizing supplies, testing the equipment, and planning out how to keep everything in order. As he approached the pool with a set of tools and covers, he noticed some neighbors lounging on chairs nearby. They waved and he nodded politely, giving a small smile. He began covering the pool with careful, practiced movements, securing each corner, making sure the water would be protected from debris and sunlight. It was a task he had done countless times, and he moved with quiet confidence, focusing on the work at hand. Not far away, a woman was sitting on her porch. She was middle-aged with a sharp tone and an air of entitlement. She had been observing the man from a distance, her eyes narrowing as he worked. She saw him handling the pool equipment and, for reasons she could not fully explain, began to feel that something was wrong. She did not know the man personally, nor had she interacted with him before. What she did know was what she assumed, and in her mind her assumptions felt like reality. Before long she stood up, her voice carrying across the yard. She shouted at him, demanding to know what he was doing. The man, hearing her, looked up calmly and explained that he was closing the pool for maintenance. He spoke in a friendly, polite tone, trying to diffuse any tension. He explained that it was his property, and he had every right to secure the pool for safety reasons. Instead of listening, the woman grew louder, accusing him of trying to block access to a place that belonged to the community. She began recording him on her phone, gesturing wildly and calling out to neighbors to get their attention. A few curious people walked closer, peeking over fences and porches, unsure of what was happening. The man continued his work, staying calm despite the growing scene. He knew that reacting angrily would only make things worse, and he wanted to handle the situation with patience and dignity. The woman, however, was determined to escalate matters. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911, reporting what she claimed was suspicious behavior. She told the operator that a man was refusing to let people into the pool area, painting a story that made it sound urgent and threatening. She added details, none of which were true, that made her concern seem more serious. By the time the call ended, a small crowd had gathered. Some neighbors were confused, some were annoyed, and others were simply watching, curious about the unfolding drama. People whispered to one another, trying to piece together what was happening. The man, noticing the gathering crowd, kept speaking politely to anyone who asked questions. He explained that the pool belonged to him, that he had been maintaining it for the neighborhood for years, and that he was simply following a routine to close it for safety. Despite his calm demeanor, the woman continued her tirade. She refused to believe his words, convinced that something was wrong. She waved her phone, showing the recording she had made as if it were evidence of wrongdoing. The neighbors who had started to gather began to murmur among themselves. Some expressed doubt about her story, while others remained silent, unsure of what to make of the situation. Children played nearby, oblivious to the tension. A few of them wandered closer, curious about the crowd, asking their parents what was happening. Parents shushed them gently, explaining that it was a disagreement between adults, nothing more. Meanwhile, the man continued his work, securing the pool cover with precision, ignoring the accusations being thrown his way. Minutes passed, and the air grew tense. The sound of distant sirens began to approach, a signal that the authorities were on their way. The woman's face lit up with triumph, certain that her actions would soon bring the man to justice. She pointed at him, talking loudly to the approaching police, ready to tell her version of the story. When the officers arrived, they parked their cars and approached the scene cautiously. The crowd shifted, giving way to the uniformed men and women. The woman rushed forward, waving her phone, explaining her side of the story with urgency. The man stepped back slightly, letting the police take the lead, confident that the truth would be clear once they observed the situation. The officers asked questions, speaking to both the woman and the man. They examined the pool area, noting the maintenance equipment and the secured gates. The neighbors who had gathered watched silently, waiting to see how the interaction would unfold. Some felt a sense of unease at the woman's certainty, while others were impressed by the man's calm composure. As the conversation continued, it became increasingly clear to the officers that the man was not doing anything wrong. He provided documentation showing that he owned the pool and had been maintaining it for the benefit of the community. He explained his routine, the safety measures he followed, and the care he took to ensure everything was in order. The woman's expression changed slowly, from confidence to confusion. She realized, though reluctantly, that her assumptions had been wrong. The officers spoke to her gently, explaining that the man had every right to close the pool and that her call was based on a misunderstanding. Some neighbors shook their heads, realizing how easily bias and assumptions could escalate a situation unnecessarily. Through it all, the man remained composed. He did not mock or belittle the woman, nor did he show anger. He spoke with patience, answering questions and explaining the situation clearly. The crowd began to disperse, with many neighbors expressing admiration for how calmly he had handled the tense moment. Some even approached him privately, thanking him for being a responsible and understanding member of the community. By the time the scene had settled, the sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the neighborhood. The man finished securing the pool, double-checking the gates and covers. He took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief that the incident had ended without further conflict. The woman, meanwhile, walked away, muttering under her breath, perhaps realizing she had overreacted, perhaps not fully understanding the weight of her assumptions. The day continued, quieter now, with neighbors returning to their routines. Children played in the yards, families relaxed, and the man, though slightly shaken by the experience, continued with his work. He knew that misunderstandings could happen anywhere, but he also understood the power of patience, calmness, and truth. He had handled the situation with dignity, showing that even in the face of false accusations, it was possible to maintain composure and respect. As the evening approached, some neighbors gathered near the pool one last time, speaking in low voices about what had happened. They shared their thoughts, realizing how quickly assumptions could spiral out of control and how important it was to observe, listen, and verify before reacting. The man listened quietly, appreciating the support, knowing that his actions had not only protected the pool but had also taught a lesson in humility, patience, and respect. The day ended with a sense of calm returning to the neighborhood. The pool was safely closed, the tension had passed, and life moved on. But the incident would not be forgotten. People would remember how quickly fear and assumptions could escalate, and they would also remember the man who handled it with grace, proving that truth, patience, and dignity could overcome misunderstanding and prejudice. In the days that followed, neighbors talked about the event, some laughing at the absurdity, others reflecting seriously on how bias could shape perceptions. The man continued his work, maintaining the pool with care, his reputation strengthened by his calm response. And though the woman's call to 911 had caused a moment of chaos, it had also revealed something important: the power of composure. Truth and patience could change how people saw the world, even in the most tense and unexpected situations. The sun had started to dip slightly, softening the bright glare that had dominated the afternoon. The quiet neighborhood that had been enjoying a peaceful weekend now felt different. A small crowd had gathered near the pool, drawn by the loud arguments and the woman's incessant filming. Curiosity was the main reason most people had come out, but a few felt tension in the air, unsure of what they were about to witness. The man continued to work on the pool, moving with calm precision. Every fold of the cover, every latch was secured with care. He kept explaining to anyone who asked that the pool was his property, and he had every right to close it. A few neighbors had come closer to observe, shaking their heads at the scene. They whispered to one another, noting the woman's aggressive behavior, her insistence on calling authorities for something that clearly seemed routine. The woman, on the other hand, was convinced she was in the right. She paced back and forth, phone in hand, ready to explain her version to the officers who were now approaching. Her voice rose and fell with urgency, capturing the attention of everyone nearby. She painted a story in her mind that made the man look suspicious, ignoring the fact that he was acting calmly and politely. "Look at what he's doing," she shouted. "He shouldn't be locking this. He doesn't belong here. Something is not right." Her words echoed in the small space around the pool, drawing annoyed looks from some neighbors and concerned glances from others. Children playing in the yards froze for a moment, curious about the loud voices, and some parents hurried to keep them at a distance. The man remained focused on his work. He did not argue or raise his voice. Instead, he explained once again to those who asked that the pool was his responsibility, and he had been maintaining it for the neighborhood for years. He told them how he had upgraded the safety features, made it accessible to all residents, and had always kept it clean and inviting. His calm voice contrasted sharply with the woman's frantic energy. Some neighbors began to question her actions. "Is she serious?" whispered one elderly man. "He's clearly taking care of the pool," said another, nodding toward the man who was now almost finished covering it. People started recording her, capturing how she yelled and waved her phone, showing her frustration and disbelief. A few others tried to intervene politely, suggesting she take a moment to see the reality before escalating further. As the police arrived, their sirens softening in the distance, the woman became more animated. She waved her phone, detailing her version of events to the officers. Her urgency made it seem as if something critical had happened, but those watching could see the calm and methodical work of the man, contrasting with her exaggerated story. The officers approached cautiously, assessing the situation. They spoke first with the woman, listening carefully to her complaint. She explained quickly and loudly that a man was preventing people from accessing a public space, that he was suspicious, and that he might pose a threat. Her story was detailed, filled with assumptions, but lacking any real evidence. The officers then turned their attention to the man. He spoke softly, clearly, and patiently, showing them documentation that proved the pool was his property. He explained the routine maintenance, the safety features, and how the pool had been upgraded over the years. He spoke of the many residents who had enjoyed it, and how he had ensured it remained a safe, welcoming place for everyone. The officers examined the pool and saw nothing unusual. They could see that the gates were secure, the water was clean, and there was no indication of any wrongdoing. The crowd of neighbors began whispering among themselves, their opinions shifting as the truth became clear. Some felt embarrassed for not understanding the situation earlier, while others were impressed by the man's calm demeanor. The children, now watching from a safe distance, began to relax, sensing the tension easing. The woman, realizing that the story she had built in her mind was not matching reality, began to stumble over her words. Her confidence waned as the officers explained that the man was within his rights to secure the pool. They noted that her assumptions had led her to escalate the situation unnecessarily. Some neighbors recorded this moment as well, knowing that her behavior had already spread quickly through their community. While the officers spoke to the woman, a few neighbors approached the man quietly. They thanked him for remaining patient, recognizing that many would have reacted angrily in his place. Some expressed relief that the misunderstanding had not turned into a conflict. The man nodded humbly, acknowledging their words but emphasizing that staying calm was the best way to handle such moments. The woman continued to mutter, clearly frustrated and embarrassed, as the officers explained the importance of verifying facts before reacting. Her phone still recording, she seemed to struggle with understanding how her assumptions had caused unnecessary tension. The man, despite the humiliation she had brought to the scene, did not gloat or show anger. Instead, he calmly finished securing the pool, making sure every latch was in place and every corner of the cover properly set. The officers eventually left, satisfied that the situation had been resolved without incident. They had spoken to neighbors, assessed the scene, and ensured that no further misunderstanding would occur. The crowd slowly dispersed, murmuring among themselves about what had happened and the lesson it provided. As the sun began to lower, casting a soft, warm glow across the neighborhood, the man took a moment to breathe. He looked around at the few neighbors still lingering, quietly reflecting on the day's events. Some nodded in appreciation, acknowledging how well he had handled a difficult situation. Others simply shook their heads, reflecting on how quickly assumptions and bias could escalate a simple routine task into a public spectacle. Life slowly returned to normal. Children resumed their play, families settled back into their weekend routines, and the pool remained secured as it should. The man continued with his other responsibilities, knowing that he had handled a challenging situation with patience and integrity. The incident, though brief, left an impression on everyone who witnessed it. In the following days, the story of the woman's call spread through the neighborhood and beyond. People discussed it, shared recordings, and reflected on how quickly fear and assumptions could distort reality. Many expressed admiration for the man, who had shown that calmness and truth could outweigh false accusations and hysteria. The incident also sparked conversations about awareness and fairness. Neighbors spoke about the importance of observing carefully, asking questions, and not jumping to conclusions. The man, meanwhile, quietly continued his work, focused on maintaining the pool and supporting his community. He remained humble, not seeking attention or recognition, but his actions spoke louder than any words. Through it all, he had demonstrated a simple but powerful lesson. Even when faced with false accusations and prejudice, patience, dignity, and truth could guide the way. The neighborhood learned from the experience, and while the woman's assumptions had created a moment of tension, it ultimately revealed the importance of composure, understanding, and empathy in building stronger, more connected communities. The morning after the incident, the neighborhood was buzzing with quiet conversations. People walked their dogs, watered their gardens, and exchanged greetings, but almost everyone carried a memory of what had happened the previous day. The story of the woman who had called 911 over the pool had spread quickly, and many were still talking about the calmness and composure of the man at the center of it all. The man, meanwhile, continued with his routine. He arrived at the pool early, carrying cleaning supplies, tools, and documents he had kept for years to prove ownership and maintenance responsibilities. While some might have felt resentment after being falsely accused, he only felt a quiet determination to continue doing the right thing. The pool had always been more than a place for him. It was a symbol of community and care. He began checking the equipment, ensuring the filters were clean, the water balanced, and the safety measures in place. Neighbors passed by, some nodding in acknowledgement, others simply observing silently. The events of the previous day had given him an unexpected platform to show his dedication and commitment. What had started as a tense confrontation now became an opportunity to showcase responsibility and patience. Word of the incident had reached a few more residents who had been away during the commotion. They came to see for themselves, curious to know how a simple act of maintenance could have caused such a misunderstanding. As they arrived, they noticed the organized and well-kept pool area, the neatly stored equipment, and the careful way the man conducted himself. It was clear that this was a labor of care, not negligence or wrongdoing. The woman who had caused the commotion had not yet returned to the pool area. Some neighbors speculated that she might be reconsidering her actions, while others assumed she was simply avoiding the embarrassment. Meanwhile, the man went about his work quietly, greeting neighbors politely, answering questions patiently, and continuing his meticulous routine. Children who had been playing near the pool the day before now watched from a distance, curious about the careful preparation and setup. A few of the neighbors who had witnessed the initial incident approached the man. They asked about the process, the maintenance schedule, and how he had managed to keep the pool in such pristine condition. He explained everything, from the water testing to the cleaning and safety features. He spoke about the upgrades he had made, the equipment he had installed, and the years of careful attention that had gone into maintaining the pool. As he spoke, more people gathered, listening intently. Some of them had been skeptical the day before, but seeing the pool and hearing the details of his work made them realize how much effort he had put in. It became clear that the woman's assumptions had been baseless. This revelation began to shift the narrative in the neighborhood, turning a story of tension into one of admiration and respect. A few local journalists had heard about the incident and came to cover it, curious about how a pool could become the center of such a dramatic misunderstanding. They spoke with neighbors, took photographs, and recorded videos, capturing the meticulous work the man performed every day. They listened to his story, his calm explanation, and his dedication to the community. What they discovered was far from the chaos initially reported. It was a story of care, responsibility, and dignity in the face of misunderstanding. The woman eventually returned, perhaps intending to assert her previous claims, but she was met with a crowd of neighbors who now had a different perspective. Some whispered to her about what they had seen, the documentation and the careful maintenance. She found herself isolated, her confidence shaken by the overwhelming evidence that her assumptions had been incorrect. The man did not confront her directly. Instead, he continued his work, demonstrating the truth through his actions rather than arguments. He answered any questions politely, remaining calm and consistent. His behavior only reinforced the message that patience, truth, and responsibility could speak louder than anger or accusations. Neighbors began sharing their own stories of how they had benefited from the pool, from children learning to swim safely to elderly residents, finding a place to relax and enjoy the community. The man had always thought of the pool as more than a personal project. It was a shared resource, a space for connection, learning, and enjoyment. The community now saw it in the same light, realizing that his dedication had positively impacted many lives. As the day went on, the incident with the woman seemed almost distant. Conversations shifted from the argument to admiration for the man's commitment. People began reflecting on the assumptions that had caused the misunderstanding. They talked about how quickly fear and prejudice could distort perception, and how important it was to observe, listen, and verify facts before reacting. The man continued to receive acknowledgement from the community. Some neighbors offered assistance, volunteering to help with maintenance tasks or simply providing support. Others expressed their appreciation privately, sending notes or stopping by to say a simple thank you. The man accepted all gestures humbly, reinforcing that his goal was not recognition, but community well-being. By late afternoon, the pool was fully maintained, the water sparkling, the gates secure, and every tool returned to its proper place. Children were playing nearby under the watchful eyes of their parents, and neighbors were engaging in casual conversation, the tension from the previous day replaced by a sense of calm and respect. Even the local journalists captured a different story than they had expected. Instead of a scene of conflict and accusation, they documented a story of perseverance, patience, and community care. Their articles highlighted the importance of understanding, the dangers of assumptions, and the power of handling difficult situations with grace. The woman, finally realizing the reality of the situation, left without further confrontation. Her departure was quiet, unnoticed by most as the focus had shifted entirely to the man and his dedication. The community, now fully aware of the facts, had a renewed respect for him and his work. In the days following, conversations in the neighborhood often returned to the incident, not as a moment of conflict but as a lesson in patience, observation, and fairness. Residents spoke about how easily assumptions could escalate into unnecessary tension, and how vital it was to approach situations with an open mind. The man continued his maintenance routine with quiet pride, not seeking acknowledgement, but knowing that his actions had already made a lasting impression. The pool remained a safe, inviting space for everyone, a testament to his dedication and care. Through the experience, the neighborhood learned an invaluable lesson. They saw that patience, truth, and calmness could overcome misunderstanding and prejudice. The man's example became a benchmark for how to handle false accusations and the importance of maintaining dignity in challenging moments. Even as life returned to its usual rhythm, the memory of the incident lingered. People shared the story with new residents, children learned about the importance of observing carefully, and the community became more mindful of assumptions and judgments. The man's actions had not only protected the pool, but had strengthened the bonds within the neighborhood, reminding everyone that understanding, patience, and respect could transform difficult situations into opportunities for growth and learning. The neighborhood had settled back into its usual rhythm, but the events surrounding the pool were still fresh in everyone's minds. People walked through the streets talking quietly about what had happened, reflecting on how quickly assumptions had escalated into a major misunderstanding. The man continued his routine, arriving early to ensure the pool was maintained and safe. Despite the tension of the past days, he moved with calm purpose, a quiet presence that reminded everyone of the importance of patience and consistency. Neighbors began approaching him more often, not with questions about the incident, but with genuine curiosity and admiration for his dedication. They asked about the equipment, how he managed the maintenance alone, and how he ensured safety for children and elderly residents. The man patiently explained each detail, showing pride in his work but never arrogance. He emphasized the importance of careful preparation and regular attention, hoping others might learn the value of commitment and responsibility. Word of the incident had spread beyond the neighborhood. Some local news outlets covered the story, focusing not on the woman's overreaction but on the man's patience and perseverance. The articles praised how he had remained calm despite false accusations, highlighting the lesson in humility and dignity. People reading the story were inspired by his actions, commenting on social media about how they wished more people would respond to conflict with the same grace. The woman who had called 911 had mostly disappeared from the scene. A few neighbors noted that she was still talking to others about the situation, defending herself quietly, but her influence had waned. The man did not engage her, and the community seemed to understand that the best way to handle such behavior was through calm observation rather than confrontation. His silence and steady presence spoke louder than any argument could. During this period, more neighbors began contributing to the upkeep of the pool, offering to help with cleaning or minor repairs. The man accepted their help graciously, sharing knowledge and teaching them about the importance of proper maintenance. It became a small community project, bringing people together in a way that had not happened before. Children learned about responsibility and teamwork, while adults appreciated the shared effort and camaraderie. The atmosphere around the pool changed completely. Where tension had existed, a sense of respect and unity now flourished. Neighbors started planning small gatherings and casual events by the pool, celebrating the space and the man who had worked tirelessly to maintain it. The pool became more than just a place for recreation. It became a symbol of community care, collaboration, and understanding. One afternoon, a group of children approached the man as he was cleaning the pool. They asked questions about the different equipment, the water balance, and how he managed to keep everything so safe. He explained each step, demonstrating a filter test and showing how he checked water levels. The children listened carefully, fascinated by the attention to detail. He encouraged them to ask questions and even let them help with small tasks, teaching them the value of responsibility and patience. Neighbors who had witnessed the initial confrontation came forward, expressing their gratitude. They shared how the man's calm demeanor had prevented a potentially volatile situation from escalating further. Some admitted that they had initially sided with the woman, but realized that her assumptions had been unfounded. Many remarked on the importance of checking facts before reacting, and how much they had learned from observing the man's composure. The man also began sharing his experiences with neighborhood meetings, offering advice on conflict resolution and the importance of understanding before judgment. He spoke about how assumptions could harm relationships and create unnecessary tension. People listened intently, taking notes and asking questions. His words were practical and grounded, full of real-life lessons rather than abstract ideas. Over time, the community began to embrace a stronger sense of connection. Neighbors who had only nodded politely to one another now exchanged greetings, chatted about projects, and worked together on small improvements in the neighborhood. The pool became a meeting point, a place for casual conversation and even minor celebrations. It was a testament to the man's consistent care and the way his actions had inspired others to take responsibility and act thoughtfully. Even the local media returned, this time to cover the positive changes that had occurred after the incident. Journalists interviewed neighbors who had helped with the pool, capturing stories of learning, growth, and the strengthening of community bonds. The man's influence was evident in every detail: the organized space, the friendly atmosphere, and the willingness of people to come together for a shared purpose. Throughout all of this, the man remained humble. He did not seek recognition or accolades, but continued his work quietly. His focus was on the well-being of the community, the safety of the pool, and the opportunity to demonstrate that patience and responsibility could turn a tense moment into something constructive. His actions had a ripple effect, inspiring others to act with integrity and calmness in their own interactions. Children continued to play safely around the pool, parents relaxed knowing the area was well maintained, and neighbors took turns assisting in small ways, all contributing to a shared sense of pride. The man's quiet leadership had transformed the space and the community, creating an environment where trust, respect, and collaboration flourished. As the weeks passed, the story of the incident became more of a lesson than a moment of embarrassment. Neighbors often referenced it when discussing assumptions and misunderstandings, noting how a calm response could prevent conflict. The man's approach had turned what could have been a negative event into an opportunity for education, reflection, and growth. The woman's initial actions were gradually forgotten, overshadowed by the positive outcomes that emerged. The focus shifted entirely to the man's dedication, the strengthened community ties, and the lessons learned from the incident. Even those who had initially judged quickly now praised his patience, realizing how important it was to observe, listen, and understand before making assumptions. In the evenings, as the sun set over the neighborhood, the pool glimmered quietly, a symbol of care, responsibility, and unity. The man would often stand back for a moment, taking in the scene. The children playing, neighbors chatting, and the calm, safe environment he had helped maintain. He knew that the incident, though challenging at first, had created a lasting positive impact on everyone involved. The story of the pool, the confrontation, and the community's growth became a reference point for new residents. They were told how a potentially negative situation had turned into a lesson about patience, truth, and respect. The man's actions demonstrated that even in the face of misunderstanding and prejudice, it was possible to guide people toward learning and positive change. By focusing on care, responsibility, and calm, the man had not only maintained a pool, but had also strengthened the fabric of the neighborhood. His example reminded everyone that conflicts could be turned into opportunities for understanding, and that thoughtful actions could inspire others to act with integrity and compassion. The pool remained secure and well-maintained. Children laughed and played safely, and neighbors shared moments of camaraderie. The man continued his work quietly, a steady presence in the neighborhood, demonstrating through action rather than words that patience, humility, and care could transform tension into trust, and misunderstanding into connection. The neighborhood had learned a valuable lesson, one that would stay with them for years to come. All because one man chose to respond with dignity, patience, and unwavering commitment. As weeks turned into months, the neighborhood had completely transformed from the day of the incident. The pool, once the center of a tense confrontation, had now become the symbol of community unity, patience, and respect. People no longer discussed the woman's accusations. Instead, they shared stories about the man's dedication, his calm demeanor, and how he had turned a potential conflict into a learning opportunity for everyone. The man continued to maintain the pool with meticulous care. Every morning he arrived early, checking the water quality, cleaning the filters, and ensuring all safety measures were in place. Children often followed him at a distance, curious about his routines and eager to learn. He welcomed their questions and even let them help in small ways, teaching responsibility and the importance of caring for shared spaces. The lessons went beyond pool maintenance. They were about patience, respect, and the value of consistent effort. Neighbors who had been skeptical or absent during the original incident now approached him frequently, offering to help or simply expressing gratitude. One elderly couple shared how much they appreciated the pool because it gave them a safe place to relax and enjoy the sunshine. Parents talked about how the children loved swimming and how the man's careful supervision gave them peace of mind. Everyone acknowledged that the community had benefited from his efforts, and his patience during the initial confrontation had become a model of how to handle misunderstanding with dignity. The man also used the opportunity to educate the community in small but meaningful ways. He organized casual workshops around the pool, explaining not only maintenance but also how to approach conflict with a clear mind and a calm heart. Residents learned about effective communication, fact-checking, and avoiding assumptions. His message was simple: observing carefully, asking questions, and understanding the full picture before reacting could prevent unnecessary tension and foster trust. Even local media followed up with the story, this time highlighting the positive changes that had resulted from the incident. Journalists reported on the community's strengthened bonds, the children learning responsibility, and the respect that had grown among neighbors. The man's actions were described as an example of leadership through calmness and integrity. People reading these stories admired the quiet strength he had shown and the way he had transformed a potentially negative experience into a positive influence. The pool itself became a hub for community gatherings. Small celebrations, neighborhood meetings, and casual playtimes took place there regularly. The once tense space had become welcoming, a place where people could connect, share stories, and enjoy each other's company. Everyone could see how much effort the man had put in, and his humility made the appreciation even more genuine. He never sought credit, but the respect and trust of his neighbors were recognition enough. Children, in particular, benefited from the man's dedication. They learned teamwork and cooperation while helping with small tasks like cleaning around the pool or setting up chairs for events. They saw the importance of maintaining a space for the community and how their actions could make a positive difference. The lessons extended beyond the pool. The values of patience, observation, and respect began influencing their behavior in school and at home. The woman who had caused the initial conflict eventually moved away quietly, her presence no longer remembered except as a cautionary tale. Her accusations had failed to disrupt the community, because the man's calm response and dedication had demonstrated the truth far more powerfully than any argument could. Neighbors often mentioned the incident as a lesson in bias and assumptions, reflecting on how quickly fear could escalate and how important it was to act thoughtfully. Over time, new residents moved into the neighborhood, and the story of the pool and the man's response became a welcome lesson. They were told about the man's dedication, his calmness during the confrontation, and the way the community had grown stronger because of it. The story served as a guide for newcomers, helping them understand the values of patience, care, and respect that were now central to the neighborhood's culture. The man's actions also inspired others to take initiative in different areas of the community. Residents began organizing small improvement projects, cleaning up common spaces, planting gardens, and helping neighbors in need. His example had shown that leadership was not about authority or loud words, but about consistent, thoughtful action that encouraged others to follow suit. The entire neighborhood benefited from this ripple effect, becoming a more connected, supportive, and thoughtful place. Even during casual interactions, the lessons from the pool incident continued to resonate. Neighbors would remind one another to take a step back before reacting, to ask questions, and to observe carefully. The values that had emerged from one tense afternoon became embedded in the neighborhood culture. The man had not only maintained a pool, he had cultivated patience, understanding, and trust among the people around him. Every evening, as the sun set and the neighborhood grew quiet, the man would take a moment to look over the pool. Children played safely under the watchful eyes of parents, neighbors chatted nearby, and the water sparkled peacefully. He felt a sense of calm and satisfaction, knowing that what had started as a routine task had grown into something far more meaningful. The community was stronger, kinder, and more connected because of his consistent care and patience. In reflecting on the journey, it became clear that the incident with the woman, although stressful at the time, had been a turning point. It had revealed not only the dangers of assumptions, but also the power of patience, calmness, and truth. The man's choice to respond with dignity rather than anger had transformed the neighborhood, creating a lasting impact that went far beyond the pool itself. The story of the pool became a reminder for everyone that understanding, empathy, and responsible action could turn challenges into opportunities. It illustrated that even in the face of false accusations and prejudice, it was possible to guide people toward learning, connection, and growth. The neighborhood had learned to value observation over assumptions, patience over anger, and integrity over reaction. The man's quiet leadership had set a new standard for the community. Every action he took, from maintaining the pool to teaching children about responsibility, demonstrated the importance of living with purpose and care. His example encouraged others to think before reacting, to help one another, and to maintain a sense of calm and dignity even in challenging situations. The pool, once a site of tension, had become a symbol of resilience and community spirit. Children laughed and learned, neighbors collaborated, and the man's influence continued to guide the neighborhood in subtle but meaningful ways. The legacy of the incident endured not because of the conflict, but because of the way one person chose to respond with patience, calmness, and unwavering commitment. Ultimately, the neighborhood thrived. Life continued with a stronger sense of trust and connection. The pool remained a safe and welcoming space, and the story of the man's composure and dedication became a cherished lesson for everyone. What could have been a moment of division instead became a foundation for understanding, respect, and lasting positive change, all because one person chose to act with integrity and patience when it mattered most.